Sebastian Rogers did not just disappear. It doesn't work that way. Children don't vanish. Something happens to them, which means someone knows something, someone is responsible. Bottom line to all of this. We're going to talk about Sebastian Rogers because we need to talk about Sebastian Rogers. We can't forget Sebastian Rogers and all the other missing children out there. And in this Tangent podcast with me, Al Wunsch, and Jonesy, we'll take a look at the case. We'll take a look at the drama surrounding this case and try to come to some conclusion here about, like, everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants Sebastian found except the people or person who is responsible for his disappearance. That's the bottom line. I'm Vinny Politan. He's Al. He's Jonesy. This is the Tangent Podcast.
It's Vinny and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast. Vinny has the blue eyes, Al cracks the jokes. Jonesy stays behind his shades, entertaining all the folks. It's Vinny and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast. Load up all your comments, hit those super chats. Let's go smash that like button, so we can all have a blast. Vinny, Al, and Jonesy on the job. They're the Sugar Hill Gang of true crime. They're telling stories of days gone by. They take crime and turn into a good old time. It's Vinny and the Tangents.
All right, here we go. You know it's Friday. You know it's lunchtime because we are here. I'm Vinny Politan, lead anchor for Court TV. Who's with me today?
I know I am.
And who are you?
I am Albert H. Wunsch III.
I own a mansion and a yacht.
I own a mansion and a yacht. And what's it called? If you have a fall, give me a call as an attorney. So, and a proud member of the Monday night Court TV show with Vinny Politan, which will not.
By the way, no show this Monday.
I was going to say, which will not be on this Monday, but ordinarily Closing Arguments has me on 8 to 9 every Monday night.
There you go.
If you can't come, call. If you can't call, write. If you can't write, we don't want you there. Simple as that.
Who's this guy behind the glasses?
I am Jonesy, the last of the radio cowboys, the last of the radio outlaws, the American daydream, if you will. Oh, the last of the radio Mohicans. Jonesy.
All right. The bottom line here, Sebastian Rogers did not just disappear. He disappeared. He vanished. When we cover stories like this, it to me, it's frustrating when, like, I use the word to say they disappeared because we can't point the finger at anyone. We don't want to give up hope that the missing person is alive. So a lot of times I'll say they seemingly vanished, but we know people don't seemingly vanish, right? There's a couple situations. One, they can just on their own disappear. I've seen that, right? People who just are checking out of life, and they may want to end their life, or they may just want to live a life anonymously somewhere else, and they just walk away, right? That's one possibility. Then there's the possibility that something accidental happens, and there's no evidence of it behind. Like, where is that? That, to me, that doesn't exist. And then there's foul play. Like, someone is responsible. This is a teenage boy. He's a teenager with autism, but was, he was a teenager. Like a teenager, if he's going to want to just like run away and disappear, there's no way that with all the attention on this case that is what happened here. Do you agree, Al, that is just like out of the possibilities, that he just decided to walk out of the house and run away from home and never be seen again?
I absolutely agree. I mean, these are the cases that tug on your heartstrings, and just it's the fact of the unknown That is so terrible. I always thought about these issues with regards to um, uh, families that get, missing in action notices that the, families in the military, and they're missing in action, and you don't know where they are, and there's no closure, and there's no explanation. There's nothing there. You live in a keep a light burning in the window. So you live in a weird type of world where you're hoping one day you're going to get a knock on the door and it's going to be that person. And you keep hope alive because that's all you have is hope. It's just and for a family to lose a child this way and to not know what happened, you're hoping for but you start to lose hope, and it's just very, very sad. It's just a tragedy across the board.
Yeah, but Joe, I'm looking at this, and I just don't feel like this is like if it's an adult. I've covered stories where adults have purposely, disappeared like into the wind. I've seen accidental cases where you think someone's missing, but maybe they drove the car into a pond and there's no evidence of it anywhere. But in today's world, with the cameras where they are, with tracking cell phones and everything else, and he's just a teenager. He's not going to be able to do that. That is to me, that is not even on the table in this.
Well, he's not self-sufficient, and the fact that he hasn't been seen, and combined with him not being able to take care of himself, or for that matter, take off and have a plan. That's highly unusual, but also it doesn't. I know you're all about hope, Vinny, but it doesn't leave me with a whole lot of hope.
No, it absolutely does. There's a level of someone, and then it comes down to two things, like some level of foul play where something happened and someone disposed of, and I hate saying it, but I'm going to, like someone disposed of him and his remains if something foul play happened on the front end. On the back end, the other possibility is being lured out, right?
Right.
Like he could physically leave the house himself. He's not a toddler, but then someone would have to actually lure him out, which again is a level of foul play, but the circumstances surrounding it are a little bit different. But what from the beginning has had me frustrated here is that there's no suspects, there's no evidence of foul play, and it's like we're standing around like, okay, so he just disappeared, and to me that's not acceptable.
And it shouldn't be acceptable. And I'm hoping that by doing this, and we've done this topic several times, that we find this boy, we bring him home, and that's really the key to me. And anyone who's lost, and I always find it to be very, very just. That's the word I'm looking for. When I see the pictures of these kids that are missing, and then they've been missing for years, and then what they do is they show what these kids should be looking like now. It really just absolutely just guts me each time I see that, and just thinking about like, look at this child that was my kid, and I didn't get to see him or her for 8 years, 10 years, or whatever, and how they've grown, and how they're different than the child that walked out the door, or that was taken, or that had disappeared or vanished. It's just so humbling of an experience, and to think about anyone like these people having to live like that, it's just horrendous.
So what's happened in this story, in this saga, is it's off the rails to a certain extent, right? I mean, I think if push comes to shove and you talk to anyone online about this, if you talk to anyone from Hendersonville, if you talk about people connected to this, they all want the same thing, right? Which is to find Sebastian and to find him, find out what happened, and if the foul play is involved, find those responsible and hold them responsible, right? So everyone has seemingly that same goal, but because of this case and the way it has broken down, first between his parents, right? His mother and father are not together. Seth has been on my show many times. He's on one side. The mother had physical custody. He was at the mother's house at the time that he, again, seemingly vanished. And they're not seeing eye to eye in this. They're not working together. And the last time Seth was on my show, it was very clear that he believes that something happened, and they know, and they're not speaking, and they need to come forward and tell the world, tell law enforcement, tell him what happened. And he was, I've seen sort of the evolution of Seth, where he's, at times we've seen reaching out to the other side, and other times I had him on, he was very guarded with what he was saying. But as time has gone on, the frustrations of Sebastian's father, Seth, have grown, and it's manifested itself in some unfortunate ways online, where from his perspective, there's people online or private investigators, to me it's kind of gray area what's going on, who seem to be harassing him and the people he has organized to try to help find Sebastian. And then on the other hand, the stepfather and the mother brought actions against a YouTuber known as Bullhorn Betty. She's been around for some time. Again, a polarizing personality on YouTube. I don't judge anyone. I just, I accept them for who they are, and just hope that everyone is here for the same reasons, right? In the true crime community, when there's a missing child, everyone's focused on the missing child. When someone is responsible, they're focused on justice, right? Those are the two places. But she was brought into court, and there's a restraining order for her to stay away from Sebastian's mother and stepfather. And, she testified, and we covered it on Court TV. But all this drama on the outside, restraining orders and the noise, to me, and Jonesy, I'm interested in your thoughts on this, that there is a grain of that's actually good, because it keeps the story alive and it keeps Sebastian's image public. So when someone sees something, they may have the knowledge of who this missing child is and what he looks like. We saw that manifest itself in an arrest stop in, I think it was Maryland or Virginia. It seemed like, this might have been him. It turned out, I guess, not to be him, but someone knew what Sebastian looked like, and this kid looked like Sebastian. So to me, there's a grain of goodness to the noise and the controversy. But the downside is there a loss of focus at that point? And the focus being obviously Sebastian. What are your thoughts, Jonesy, about all the noise on social media that is turning into restraining orders and cease and desist orders on all ends versus trying to find this child?
I think you hit on the only positive that I could think of, which is that it keeps the story afloat, that it keeps it in people's eyes. But by the same token, it also distracts from the end goal, which is to find the kid. And bickering among the people who are supposed should care the most isn't good. I think that distracts from like the end goal. Now, of course, if anybody sees the child, they're going to do something about it, but it's not good.
No,
I don't think it's good at all. And as far as like Bullhorn Betty, and I don't know much about her. I don't think that's good.
wait. Adam drives. Adam drives Helen. He's like, that's exactly every time I say her name, that's what I do. Bullhorn Betty, bam lamb, bullhorn Betty, bam lamb. Right? Like, and because anytime I hear phrases, for some reason, I don't know if it happens to you, Jones, and you, Alex. I know you both love music as much as I do, but there are phrases and songs that will run around my head when I hear certain words. It triggers.
Yes.
And every time I hear Bullhorn Betty, I am with Adam drives Helen, and I'm Bullhorn Betty, bam lamb. Is there something wrong with me?
No. I mean, it's actually, it's a way to remember it, and it's actually fun to kind of put.
But does it happen to you, Al? Does it?
Yes.
When someone says a phrase and it's like a lyric of a song, do you start like singing the song in your head?
I had a case that was ended up going to the Supreme Court of New Jersey, and after I had won on 2 levels, I lost up there, and the case was the plaintiff's name was Gianni, and all I could do was like the Fine Young Cannibal song, which was Johnny, and I'd go Gianni, dun 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 dun, and I would just constantly be doing that, and here I am arguing in front of the Supreme Court, and that song is in my head, and all I could keep it was that without laughing. It was just ridiculous. But it's interesting, Vin, that we're talking about this missing child, because on this day,
the Civil War to civil rights and all the revolution fights, World War I and World War II,
Big one.
Always knows who is who. It's this day in history, this day in history, history. Now let's listen to his story.
All right, Al, what's your story today?
all right, we have a couple. One, on 11/8/1960, JFK was elected president in a very very close race, in which had Richard Nixon actually probably challenged the election, there may have been a change in who won. Machines disappeared in Illinois, and specifically in the Chicago area.
How could that happen?
They said it was something to do with just misplacing. It happens every now and then, and so that went on that.
Well, let me follow up on that.
Okay.
Did Frank Sinatra really have anything to do with that?
Well, Frank Sinatra was obviously very close to the Kennedys and obviously campaigned for the Kennedys. In fact, the Rat Pack all campaigned for the Kennedys. Right. Did he have anything to do with it? I don't necessarily think he had
the
anything
disappearance of the votes in Illinois.
It was all. They said that it was Mayor Daley that was involved in that, and obviously Sam Giancana, who was a Chicago mob boss, had some handles in that. They had all been paid off by JFK's father, who they had been involved with. Giancana had been involved with the old man in during Prohibition and running alcohol from Canada into the United States during Prohibition. So that was a set on that. I do want to, before I do the true crime thing, which actually deals with a missing child, I want to just, we're not on Monday on Court TV, and the reason is because it's Veterans Day. And Veterans Day is a very important day in our history, and it's something that if you know a veteran or you see a veteran, you thank them for their service. This is not Memorial Day, but the reason why we have this day is because of what World War I. World War I ended on the 11th month, on the 11th day, at the 11th hour, and that's how we come up with Veterans Day. In Europe, they use it as Remembrance Day, and it is the end of World War I, so that's why we have that. Now, moving on to true crime history, Okay, on this date in 1973, a package came into a newspaper, and in that package was a lock of hair and an ear. And it was the ear of the grandson of none other than John Paul Getty, who had been kidnapped in July of 1973 and had been held for ransom. And the initial ransom demand was $17 million, which would be well over $100 million today. And John Paul Getty Sr. was asked by his son to provide them with the money. And he said, I have 13 other grandchildren. So if I have to pay that money out for all of them, I'd be broke. So that was his answer. So he refused to do it. There was also a thought that the grandson, who was 16, by the way, when he was kidnapped, may have fabricated this whole thing and actually had been part of on the planning because he wanted money. Okay. And his girlfriend, when spoken to by the authorities, said, well, he toyed with that idea. So we don't know if these kidnappers were somehow involved in
But he'd
that.
have to cut off his own ear.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what I was wondering.
Well, what ended up happening is because they weren't getting any satisfaction. So nobody was answering. They refused to pay that. They knocked it down to $3.2 million. Okay. And I
Tell you what we're gonna do.
Let's make a deal.
When the letter went to the newspaper with the ear and the lock of hair, they said that this is his first ear. We'll be sending you his second ear very shortly if we don't get an answer, and then we will continue to send you parts until you pay the ransom. The ransom was paid.
What other parts?
The ransom was paid. They never got the money back. Unfortunately, John Paul Getty's grandson, his health deteriorated badly. His ear that was sliced off got badly infected. They didn't know what to do. They kept giving him penicillin and too much penicillin, where he actually developed a problem with the penicillin and made things worse. So they kept feeding him brandy to alleviate the pain and to help him sleep.
What year was this? Al?
73.
1973.
Wow. And they went with brandy?
Yeah. Well, they wanted to he had to do something for the pain. They didn't have painkillers. So they were trying to do that to alleviate the pain, which ended up creating him into being an alcoholic. He eventually got released, and he dies very young. He dies at the age of 54.
He wasn't in on it.
He was not in on it. They had a situation where he was hooked on drugs. He was hooked on alcohol. He ended up having a massive stroke and was confined to a wheelchair. And the last few years of his life was as basically an invalid. He was able to start talking a little bit, but he dies relatively young.
How did the Gettys make their money? Is it oil? Was it oil?
Yes.
And which TV program when we were growing up referred to the Gettys as like spaghetti or something?
J. Pauline Spaghetti was one of the rich benefactors in Gotham City.
Gotham City, spaghetti. I just remember that.
J. Pauline Spaghetti.
Spaghetti
was the name, and then she ends up getting kidnapped. I think it was by the Penguin.
Okay.
And so that was the whole thing. So she was one of the bon vivants of Gotham City with a ton of money to play.
I never figured out that character reference. I mean, there were obvious ones, like at least to people who grew up around New York. Mayor Linseed, reference to Mayor Lindsay and all that.
And New Guernsey.
Right, but I never figured out that one, the Getty character.
So, November 8th, 1973, John Paul Getty III's ear and lock of hair ends up at a newspaper, basically telling them, "We're serious, and you better get us some cash."
We don't get kidnappings like that anymore of the rich families, do. It doesn't happen. And my guess is twofold. One, I think it's in today's world really difficult to get away with any of this stuff. like really difficult. Like I think in less developed nations, maybe you can, but here between law enforcement, video surveillance, digital footprints, and everything else going on, I think it would be really difficult to kidnap a high-profile person and then communicate for the ransom. I mean, I get it.
I don't disagree with you about the reasoning, but it seemed like kidnapping disappeared long before all of today's surveillance and communication. Like when's the last time we heard of like a wealthy person being kidnapped? Like
in the United States.
I'll tell you this:
70s.
At 1907.
That's a long time ago.
My great uncle was kidnapped.
Really? Oh, come on.
My grandfather's family had a fruit market in the Bronx, and it was very successful. And the Black Hand, okay, which was the Italian at the beginning of the Italian mafia, okay, had kidnapped because my great grandfather, his father, told them that he wouldn't pay any money for protection, so they took the kid. The FBI at this point is non-existent, so they're not doing anything. But what was interesting was that the police officer in New York that handled it, and I'm going to look up his name in a second.
Krumke?
Not Officer Krumke, but this police officer was an Italian who basically was there to deal with the mafia situation. And he's the only police officer in New York City history to be killed in the line of duty in Sicily.
Oh, wow.
So what happened was years later.
They used him as an interpreter so you could understand what they were saying? Oh, bing, bam, boom, whoa.
Years later, he was going into Sicily to deal with an investigation that was going on, and they tipped off the authorities, they tipped off the mafia that he was coming into Sicily, and then he was executed in Sicily. And he's the only police officer.
How's your uncle?
My great uncle, Uncle Sam, okay. Sam Saida, by the way. He's no longer with us, but he was kidnapped, and they held him for 9 months, and he was returned without paying a ransom, but a ransom had been requested.
Okay. Well, if he was still alive, it'd be a miracle, because
it would be a miracle.
140 years old.
They lived very. I will tell you that, like, my grandfather lived into his late 90s, and my Uncle Sam lived into his early 90s. So I mean, they did a pretty good job sticking around. I
love that story for the kidnapping angle, but I also love the idea that your great grandfather stood up to the mob and said, no tribute for you, no tribute for you.
That's gutsy. That's gutsy. So I want to play. This is a report from one of the local.
If I could just add one thing, I'm sorry. The police officer's name is Joseph Petrosino. And he has there's a statue to him in Little Italy, okay, and there is this is a true hero, and gunned down way too young, but he was a 48.
It's the early 1900s. Every other cop is Irish,
and that's just it. You're right, and so it was very rare as that he was 48 years of old. 48 years of age, and he died shortly after. It's like 1909 or something like that, after the situation with this kidnapping. And like I said, it was a setup. They sent him over there. They tipped off the Black Hand that they were going to be. He's going to be there, and he was executed. So, right.
The reasoning behind that, I guess, is you don't want to take out like a New York City cop in America.
Well, there was never a reason for a New York City cop to be outside of New York City. Okay. So, what had happened was, because he was so involved in this investigation of the Black Hand and what was going on. Okay. They sent him over there for the purposes of doing, an investigation. And then he was executed. So
Right.
Joseph Petrosine, hero.
Hey, Vinny, is there a mafia?
There might be organized crime, but I don't think Italian Americans have anything to do with it.
They said that Michael Corleone said this, Michael Corleone said that, and I said, yeah, sure, why not? Not true though. Oh, I delivered olive oil with his father years ago. Angels.
So, Dog the Bounty Hunter has teamed up with Sebastian's father and spoke with my friend and colleague, Julie Grant, on Court TV. Let's take a quick listen to some of what he had to say about this and this really isn't a bounty investigation. This is more of a private investigation to find out what happened to Sebastian.
Two questions. The theory is, my theory, the only theory that I have is he's missing. Whether he's still alive or not, that's not, I thought in the beginning that he might be alive, and the more tips we have, the more people, the more things we're figuring out, he might not be alive. So, it's not my theory of how I find people. Sometimes it's completely different than what I think. And the way we find him and help is someone, we know there's two people that were involved in his disappearance, but someone else has to know. And $100,000 reward that's been put up is, $1/10,000,000. That's a lot of money. So we're waiting on we have 833 Tail Dog. My partner, Nick the Hat, has got his number out there. We're waiting for someone to call in on the tip line and give us a real live tip.
Doug, would you give us an update, please, on any good information that's come in so far? Has anything you've received in the way of tips been?
Well, let's start here with the 100,000. That's a big change, and that's a real number.
That's 1/10 of a million, huh?
It is. I mean, but let me do the math on. Wait a second. Yeah, it is.
I think it's funny that he says that, though. Like inflating it by using the million word.
The million. It's 10% of a million.
Everything about him is an exaggeration.
Yeah. How is it he still has all that hair? Extensions.
Yeah, probably. Well, that's his trademark. That's his look, baby. Everybody in the biz has their look.
True.
Like Al has his I was in court today look going right now.
He does.
I was in court today, and I'll be in court after this too, by the way.
So, and he wears the glasses. Nothing wrong wearing shades, right, Jonesy?
Not at all. Not at all.
If you're, Bret Hart.
So what's interesting
you got something against Bret Hart?
I love Bret Hart. Bret Hart is my third favorite wrestler of all time.
The excellence of execution, the best there is, the best there was, and the best.
Wait, you just said third favorite. Give us the top two.
Okay, Roddy Piper #1 and Ric Flair #2.
Wow, I can't argue with that.
I got Shawn Michaels in no particular order, Ric Flair, and superstar Billy Graham.
Ooh, I have a Bruno Sammartino.
Of course.
Mil Mascaras.
Oh.
And Ivan Putski.
I saw Mil Mascaras defend his IWA title 3 times at Roosevelt Stadium in Jersey City. I saw Bruno defend his title maybe every month for 4 or 5 years at Madison Square Garden.
Jonesy, I was there with you, with my dad.
Yeah. Cool. Were you at Roosevelt Stadium?
The Honorable. I would drag the Honorable to wrestling. Unbelievable.
That's excellent.
Let's listen to more of a Dog.
At all viable?
Well, my lawyer's giving me stink eye. I better watch my mouth because, allegedly, that's the word. Allegedly.
Sure.
Allegedly, it was people need to read the facts. How'd the boy get out the back? How come no one did anything? Why was the stepfather threatening people that were out looking for the boy? Volunteers were out there and he was threatening them. Is there a family tie between either side of the family, between sexual perversion really bad? I mean, there's a lot of things that the public can look at before, it goes to a jury. And all roads lead to Rome.
Doug, tell us about the roads that.
Interesting. So, and it's been clear, and it was clear on my show when Seth came on, and Doug is working with Seth, that they believe that mom and stepdad are connected to all this. Now, law enforcement, again, has said no sign of foul play. There are no suspects. Like, there's no crime.
Right.
Like, they're at the point where there's no crime yet. I don't understand, and I don't know what exactly entailed the investigation, the initial investigation when the child is missing. But to me, that's where evidence can be lost, right? But there's the initial panic. You have a missing teenager, and your first inclination of a missing teenager is what? Run away, right? That a teenager's run away.
Yeah.
So you're looking for a missing teenager who's run away, but this is a missing teenager who also has autism and I believe has some medication that he takes. So it becomes a little more imminent. But at what point do you think it's fair for law enforcement responding to a teenager who is missing from home to turn that into some sort of a criminal investigation?
Well,
Or to look at the home as a potential crime scene.
That's the natural reflex, though. That's the natural reflex. Okay, so if you take a look at it from the standpoint of, okay, initially you might think he ran away from home, but if there's no indicia as to that was the situation, then the next step is it's potentially a criminal action. And then who are the first suspects is always going to be the people who he lives with. I mean, that's just natural that they're going to be the ones that are maybe not necessarily suspected, but they're certainly going to be investigated because.
So what could they, based on just that, the child's missing and they're living there, and the mother's the last one known to have seen him, is that enough to get a warrant to do a search of the home? Is that enough to get a warrant to search to confiscate the cell phones? Is that enough to go to their carrier and get all their text messages? Is that alone enough? The fact that the child is missing and they live in your house?
No, I don't think that's enough to get the to get a warrant on those issues just based on supposition. You would need to have something a little more concrete.
You need something more, right? You need something to indicate some level of, but if they keep saying, if they said publicly, and they really don't speak on this, if they say publicly there's no evidence of foul play, if that's what they're saying publicly, you can't get a warrant for anything. So the only access you could get to any of these things is if they voluntarily give it all up, right?
Correct. That's exactly right. And now you would.
Next question, Al. If they refuse to voluntarily give it up, can that be used as a basis to get it?
No.
It can't, right?
You have a Fifth Amendment right.
Right.
I mean, and the thing is this, you have a right to privacy. Now you would think, okay, that under the circumstances, I would do anything and everything to help find the child. It would automatically think that. But the stepfather may not think that. I mean, he may care, but I mean, he's certainly his own person. He doesn't have that kind of connection. The mother may think that, or she may not. She may also be afraid that maybe there's stuff on the phone that's not appropriate.
Well, how about this? Let's get to the fact that neither one of them really very publicly searched for the child. Now, they both gave interviews. The mother and stepfather spoke with a live streamer I had on my show. They also spoke, I think, with Nancy Grace. So they did speak when Sebastian first went missing. They've kind of gone into hiding. But Jonesy, let me throw this out at you because this gets to, again, what's happening in the world of social media. They quickly became villainized. The stepfather and the mother became very quickly, like almost out of the box, villainized after their first two interviews. Okay. And stepped back from the public spotlight. They stepped back from, and they didn't take part in any searches, and they seemingly have sort of not done much of anything publicly about this. Is it fair, Jonesy, to cut them a break that because every time they were public and out there, they're being, from their perspective, seemingly harassed by people, that they're just protecting themselves and, their family from what's happening, all the noise surrounding this and some of the accusations around this? Or as a parent of a missing child, do you step forward no matter what, take the hits that you got to take, but do everything you can to attempt to find your child?
Okay, it's two-sided here. First of all, you don't step back if you're the parent. You just keep forging ahead. John Benet Ramsey's parents were accused big time, and this is before the social media. This is before it became so easy to cast blame and point fingers, and sometimes do it anonymously or under a handle, a nickname like Bullhorn Betty or whatever the case may be, or that other guy that everybody loves that I can't pick on out of Massachusetts. Unfortunately, we live in a time with social media that people can just attack, and people can just come to conclusions. And, any Joe Schmo, the Three Stooges, could do a podcast about it if they want to.
Hey, Mo.
Why, certainly. La-dee-la-da. Vernacular, it's a derby.
So it's unfortunate that will happen, whether it's justified or not, that people will cast blame. But if a loved one's missing and people are blaming me, you just keep going with it. Now, on the other hand, if the police are looking at you, you've got to do the right thing, and you've got to get the loved one found, brought home, and have it solved. But by the same token, there is some wisdom to remaining. Anything that you say can be used in
right. Al, you're not my only guest on my show. I have others.
Really?
Yeah. And inevitably,
I was the only one.
You got that little guy.
Every criminal defense attorney, I ask them this question, and I say, should you remain silent even if you're 100% factually innocent? And they say yes.
Yeah.
And I say, if it's your child who is missing, and they say yes. What are your thoughts on this, Al? Because I have strong opinions, and I'll give them in a second, but I want to hear from you. If a parent is, and only a parent knows, right? You know if you're factually innocent, and you are factually innocent, would you still allow your client, who is a parent of a missing child, speak publicly, speak to the police, speak to podcasters, go on a microphone, make statements, go on social media?
I'm not a fan of that. I don't like to do that. And I find it's interesting.
Factually innocent, remember, factually innocent.
But what I'm trying to say is that everybody thinks that they know how you're going to react under these circumstances. And everyone, has a cookie cutter approach to, if this was my child, I would be doing this, and this, and I would be running around like a chicken without a head on, and things along those lines. What's interesting is that in past history is, and please don't play the song again. If past history is somewhat indicative of what goes on, it's generally the ones that overreact and go crazy and start doing all this kind of stuff and running around the chicken head on are the ones that are somehow involved in the situation. The ones that are making up what could have happened, or giving surprise clues as to, well, I did see an individual who I believe was black hanging out by my house, and I was kind of curious as to why that was happening, and things along those lines. I generally find that the people who are guilty are the ones that are always looking for someone to tell a story to try to get the scent off of them. The hardest thing as a defense attorney is to represent an innocent person, believe it or not. It is the most difficult thing.
Right. How about an innocent person in a case where police have publicly said there are no suspects and there's no evidence of foul play?
But you don't know
Would
what
you still put the muzzle on them?
but I wouldn't put the muzzle on them with regards to certain things, but I'm certainly going to put a muzzle on them as to, getting involved with everything that's going on with this, the media blitz and things along those lines. I don't find that to be particularly helpful. And I find that when you put yourself out there and then all of a sudden you're a cause celeb, that all this stuff comes back to haunt you.
But how about this? How about the but see, your filter is your filter, your work is your work. I look at it as through the filter of there's a missing child. If a parent of the child is not going to advocate for finding my child, who will? Like, why would we? Why would the public? If the parent of the child is not out there advocating for the search and the answer and finding my baby, no matter how old my baby is, whether my baby is literally a baby or my baby is 30 years old, if a parent isn't out there advocating for that, like, the chances are it goes by the wayside in that huge pile of cold cases that exist. And then it's out of sight, out of mind. The reason that Sebastian remains on the minds of everyone and this story has not ended is because of Seth, the father. He has taken hits as well. He's taken accusations. There are some people, for whatever reason, don't like him and think, oh, he's shady, whatever. He doesn't care. He continues to go anywhere and everywhere and connect with people to keep the search going, to get the rewards out there. I mean, I don't know exactly what I do, but I do know I would never stop. And I've met those parents through the years at Court TV. I've met those parents. And then I've met the other parents, the ones who somewhere down the road end up getting charged.
But generally, you find that those are the ones that are throwing out theories and throwing out, false clues and things along those lines. I mean, it's a very, very difficult situation. And I don't know if any one of us is qualified to say how we'd react under those circumstances. I don't know. I really don't know what would be the react. I'd like to think the same way. I'd like to think that if I saw somebody standing in front of there was going to get hit by a truck, that I was going to run out and tackle them to save them from that. Or when you're involved in an armed robbery and you're going to stand up because they're beating somebody and you're going to, tackle the guy who was the assailant. Everybody talks a great game until they're in the game.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm tackling the guy with the gun. Jonesy, you've actually experienced that, haven't you?
Well, I actually was mugged on the beaches of Asbury Park before I moved here. After a class.
Wait. First of all, Jonesy gets mugged on a beach. Like, how does that even happen? Explain.
That's the true greetings from Asbury Park.
What happens is you're dressed like you have money, long cashmere jacket, and you're hanging out at Clarence Clemens' dressing room, and you're drinking a little bit, and you put a couple of bottles of beer in your pocket to bring back to the hotel, and you decide to walk on the beach. So I was mugged, and Clarence didn't show up to save me as I had hoped. I was hoping he'd pull up in a limo and jump out. He's a big, imposing man. And, I fought them off for a while. I reached into my pocket and I threw one of the beers I was carrying at their head, and then another one. And then they came in and they gave me like a couple of lefts and a right. A guy kept taking me out from behind. I was with my girlfriend. I didn't know what they were doing to her. But anyway, the reason I tell you this story is because afterwards, everybody and their mother told Jonesy what they would do if they were in that situation. And there was nothing more aggravating than being in that situation doing the best you can, eventually realizing you don't know where your gal is. She's somewhere behind you. There's two of them, eventually, like, a hand over the wallet kind of deal. But everybody and their mother knew exactly how they would defend themselves and handle that situation.
How much did they get, Jonesy?
They didn't get much cash, like $20 or something, but they rang up my ATM credit card for a couple of grand. And unfortunately, the police could have stopped that, or the credit card company could have stopped that, because they went to one place and ran a test, ran a couple of small charges. And then they checked into a motel on the outskirts of town. So they could have been busted, but nobody cared.
Yeah, but you know who does care? There is one person who cares.
Time to get happy. It's time to get funky. It's time for us to smile, because here comes McSpunky.
McSpunky is here today paying my... Now, I don't know this word. T-I-T-H-E. Is that a word? Or is that a... Paying my...
Teeth. Yes, of course. Teeth
Well,
is
it's one of those old-timey words. I don't know. What is it?
It's a medieval term that you pay a percentage of your fortune to the church, and it's a teeth.
Okay. So McSpunky's paying his teeth to St. Vincent and the Tangents. Thank you so much.
And he's using medieval language.
It's fantastic. I told you. And all of a sudden, what's the result? McSpunky comes on. Everybody's smiling once again.
Can I just say this, that there's a little bit of, I had heard the story about Jonesy, and of course I went and continued the investigation. And it turns out that these were the angriest fourth graders in all of Asbury Park. I mean, they really were quite angry, and there were four of them. And so, and it was a very sad story, but they got their comeuppance. They were held back, and they had to repeat the fourth grade. So justice was done.
They actually had some boxing training, because when they came in at me, I could tell. And there was a boxing club like right across the street. Like Asbury was like downtrodden at the time. It was kind of a bad neighborhood, but they had this youth boxing center, and they went around the corner and they disappeared. And I always thought they had a key to that boxing center, because they were members, and they hid out in there, because the guys did come at me with like lefts and jabs, and like, they knew how to fight.
Yeah. By the way, Gen X, showing everyone where you can connect with Jonesy.
Oh, very kind of you, Gen X.
Gen X, part of our mod squad, keeping order in the chat.
Order in the chat. Order in the chat. Don't dare attack. We've got order in this chat. The mod squad is on the job, helping us to keep it clean. The mod squad is on the job, always so nice and never mean. So let's give it up and say hello to the three amazing ladies running the show. Gen X, let's make some noise. Frankie Figs, let's clap our hands. And Jennifer Subay, let's raise the roof. Order in the chat. Order in the chat. Don't dare.
All right.
We've got
order in the chat. Thanks to our mod squad, Gen X, Frankie Figs, and Jennifer Subay. By the way, their popularity, I think they're more popular than we are at this point.
And with good reason.
Yeah.
The great thing about shows like this is regulars become like popular characters within the show. You need not be on the air all the time like we are. You just need to show up and make a splash, and suddenly you're a character that everybody wants to meet or talk to.
Absolutely. Now, Louise P. pointing out that the kidnapping of October 7th, 2023, absolutely. Our discussion, I think, was more focused on the kidnapping for ransom in the United States. And but a Facebook user, some anonymous person, has said an Amish girl was kidnapped not that long ago. and red rummed. Do we know about the Amish girl?
No, I do not.
I'm not familiar with that, but we should look that up. We should look that up. But that's interesting. Imagine just Facebook user anonymous. That's very interesting.
We're what we were referencing is that the so-called the ransom thing, like the Lindbergh kidnapping,
Right?
What happened with John Paul Getty III. A 16-year-old boy who's grabbed up 3 o'clock in the morning in Italy and held in a cave, and then they want 17 million, and then they bargain it down to 3.2 million. I mean, the chutzpah of a grandfather who says, "Well, I got other grandkids, so if I got to pay 17 million for each of them, I've got no money left." I mean, that, like, you want to talk about a reaction. Would you suspect him, Vin, as being involved if he wouldn't pay the ransom of 17 million?
No,
Okay.
but 17 was 100, right? So that's what you told me.
Yeah, it would have been $122 million today. So, I mean, obviously it was a sizable amount of money. And it eventually went down to 3.2, which is like $17 million today. So, I mean, it came across, and the money was never found. And no one was ever really punished for it. Most of the people that were involved in it got away with it. So, and the poor boy, okay, because he was 16 as a boy, from 1981 to 2011 was basically in a wheelchair and almost a vegetable, based on the aftermath of going through that horrendous situation. And the other situation we bring up, and we talk about this all the time, and you mentioned him earlier. Frank Sinatra's son was kidnapped also.
Yes, I was thinking of that when you when Sinatra was brought up earlier.
Who would have because he was somewhat connected.
Well, that's what they say. But when you're in show business like that and playing those kind of nightclubs, how do you not have dealings with members of the underworld, whether they be Italian or Irish?
Yeah, but they would. Who took Sinatra's son?
It was some individuals that were trying to make money quickly.
And did they get paid?
I don't believe that they did. I'm not 100% sure.
Was it Junior, Frank Sinatra Jr.?
Yeah, it was his son, Frank Sinatra Jr.
Yes, and there were accusations.
He only has one son.
There were accusations at the time that Junior was in on it, but as far as I know,
guess that's always the rumor, right?
They weren't true, as far as I know.
He loved his father.
Yes, he did, and he morphed into his father. I saw him perform live and lead the orchestra. He led Sinatra's orchestra in later days. They say that Sinatra always carried like a roll of quarters after that to use payphones, or maybe a roll of dimes in those days, because he needed to be in touch with kidnappers or whatever.
His kidnapping was on December 8th, 1963. And it was a bunch of amateur criminals that had grown up together. They were classmates from a Los Angeles high school, and they're the ones that put this whole thing together. And they, grabbed the kid, okay, and he was held for a couple of weeks.
Wow, yeah. That's dangerous because
yes,
for a lot of reasons.
And this was just days after the Kennedy assassination.
Wow.
December 8th, okay, Kennedy, was assassinated on November 22nd. In 1963.
So the story was probably buried. Like, that would be a lead story. It was probably, a little bit buried by the JFK. So Sue Forte today. So Vinny, is there verified video of Mom and Sebastian at the restaurant and leaving the night before he disappeared? There's images. Yeah. And Seth told me, I've seen the image. So there is that video. So that's like the last proof of life outside of Mom's own words, right? So from that point forward, what happened? Where did they go? And to me, if you were investigating all that, you could put the pieces together. If you had Mom's phone, stepdad's phone, you had Seth's phone, you could geotrack all the locations, and the apps and the text messages if they voluntarily give everything up. But to me, it's not clear if they did. I don't even know how far the criminal investigation has gone if they have no evidence of a crime. Like, can you have a criminal investigation without evidence of a crime? I guess you could always ask for this stuff voluntarily, and then if they don't give it to you, they don't give it to you. But like, and I've seen this from parents. I'm going by experience, right? Because through the years, the decades, I've spoken to parents of missing children, and inevitably, they first of all are driven by this love for their child that they will do anything and they want them found. They have the realization that they're in the circle of suspicion just because they are. Like you said, Al, the people closest to the missing person are in that circle. So they said they want to quickly get themselves cleared. So what do you need? What do you need from me? Do you need me to take a lie detector? Do you need my phone records? What do you need? I'll give you everything you need so you can start looking for the person that actually did this. And I've seen that response many, many times. I will also say, I interviewed a parent of a missing baby who was a suspect for decades until that baby was found. Someone had broken into his home and kidnapped that baby. And no one believed that was the story, including law enforcement. So he's a suspect for years. He cooperated. He did everything. So it is possible that someone can get in and out of a house, take someone. We saw it with Elizabeth Smart as well. So, I mean, everything is on the table here, obviously, I believe, except Sebastian being a runaway. Because I don't believe a 15-year-old could sustain himself and stay off of the radar.
No, not happening.
It wouldn't happen. So everything else is on the from my perspective is in play here.
Well, I just want to follow up a little bit on the Frank Sinatra Jr. situation. The ransom was paid in that case. It was $240,000, and it's $240,000. It was paid. There were 3 individuals that were involved. 2 went to pick up the money. The other one kind of panicked and let Francis Jr. leave. And he was wandering down the street, and then he talked to a security guard, and then they came and they got him. They eventually found all 3. They got him back most of the ransom, and it was the defense that brought up that this was all a publicity stunt.
That was their defense
by the kid. So
wow.
They had some ties to him, right? Didn't they go to the same school or something like that?
They were certainly. They were younger than he was. I think he was 19 at the time or something along those lines. But it was that was the defense. The defense came up with the theory that it was orchestrated by him as a publicity stunt, and no one bought it. All 3 were convicted.
Girl mom too. Oh, go ahead, guys. One second.
Nope.
Sorry about that. We had some important business to take care of here in the household. Girl mom too. Sebastian's case is very similar to the baby Joe Clyde Daniels case in Dixon, Tennessee. I remember that case. The only difference is that TBI got a confession from his father. Yeah, I mean, whoever's closest to the missing child is going to be in the circle here. Now, could he have walked out by himself? Yes. Could he have been lured? Yes. But wouldn't there be evidence of him being lured? I mean,
Yes.
I've got to think that they went through all of his devices, whether it's his if he's a gamer, because people communicate on games, his phone, etc. That is at a minimum, investigators had to go through all that. So if he was lured, they would likely have evidence of it.
Right. And it's this the quandary you go through with regards to a situation like this, where there are no clues and there's nothing easy to explain it away. As I said before, as I started off the show, is just the most troubling aspect of it, and it's just that hope that you get that knock.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as time moves forward, not that it hasn't happened, and you brought up a perfect example of a situation where a baby was abducted, and then years later they found the child, and the parent who had been initially the target of the investigation is basically cleared, but that's more the exception than the rule,
Oh, it
unfortunately.
is. It's absolutely Carolina, Nana, Debbie. Word has it that the stepdad has family in law enforcement. Law enforcement has not given an update on the case in months now, and that's true. Law enforcement, I don't think they have any information. Should they be seeking more help? Should law enforcement do more to keep these stories in the news? I believe that's a big. There's a gap. Like, law enforcement generally hates social media. They hate the true crime community in ongoing cases. They generally do. You're interfering, blah, blah, let us figure it out. But what we've learned through the years, and in a lot of these cases, the more the true crime community drums things up, all of a sudden information starts to come out. Whether it's weeks, months, sometimes years. Podcasts do that as well. And I just believe spotlight on, you have a better chance that if the spotlight's off, it goes cold. And you don't know how many cold cases there are. I mean, part of my job is we're always looking for stories, and we're looking, and I can't believe the number of cold cases that exist. Now, I don't believe that law enforcement is going to want to cover anything up for anyone.
No, not going to happen.
Not in a case like this, not with this much public attention. This is high profile. Everyone's in on this story. The local news is all over it. You are not sacrificing your career, your livelihood, nor protecting someone because you've got family. I don't believe that.
I agree with you. It's improbable, but I want to turn attention back to with the Lindbergh kidnapping. Okay, now this is before social media, and you had a situation where the boy was kidnapped, it was missing, was no longer around, and instead of the mass media we have now and all that other sources, you had all these psychics getting involved. You had all these, junior detectives getting involved that read, Sherlock Holmes, and they were all offering assistance.
And Encyclopedia Brown.
Yes, Encyclopedia Brown, and and he always gets the job done. And you would have like psychics that would just come in, and Lindbergh himself was, especially his wife, was susceptible to that, and was always willing to listen to, one of these people.
Because you want hope. You want hope.
It's kind of like desperation, right?
Yep. Speaking of psychics, a Green Wool Witch, who I met at Crime Con, and hopefully next year in Denver we'll be hanging out as well. Fellas, missed you all thanks to an angry storm, but we're finding our new normal. Glad to see you. Great to see the Green Wool Witch today in our chat. Also with us, Cognizance in Crime. Have you heard the latest from the At Night Investigations Agency insinuating a digital footprint found linking to Canada? Could trafficking be involved? This would be the luring, right? This would be that he was lured somehow. If there's a digital footprint, that's how it would happen. So At Night Investigations is looking at that, and I guess following up on that. I haven't heard that yet, but to me, everything's on the table. Everything's on the table.
The trafficking situation obviously is plausible, but you would also start seeing that it's one, and then that's it. I mean, is there a history in the area? We didn't see anything along those lines. No one's brought any of that up. Law enforcement hasn't. There's not a glut of missing children in that area, and generally your trafficking situation is going to. They try to get as many as they can in an area where they are able to, work with impunity. So I'm not necessarily sure that's the situation. And I also, it's just, I mean, I hope to God that's not the situation, but it is, it just doesn't make sense to me that there's nothing more to that story. And I have to think that would have been the first thing that would have been looked at in a lot of respects. So running away would probably be first, and then a trafficking situation would be second. And you would only look at that if there had been other abductions in the area. And there's nothing that proves that at this stage.
Right. Where am I? Here we are. Let's see. Granny, all parents handed devices. They kept Sebastian's gaming. Yeah. You hand in your devices. The question is, what are the results of these searches? What did they find? What were they able to download? What did they come to any conclusion? Again, you're voluntarily giving up your devices. You're voluntarily speaking and giving your statements to investigators, and investigators have said no crime, right. No evidence of any crime. So, like, where he didn't just disappear. He didn't just disappear. Now, obviously, the results of whatever they found, if it has not resulted in an arrest, they are going to hold all of that information.
Right.
Whatever they have, they're going to hold it. And as they follow any potential leads. Now, the question is, though, through all, if we've gotten to this point, that it's been this long, right? March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. I mean, you're talking 8+ months here, and nothing has happened. In 8+ months, you could follow up any lead of any information that was gotten from any device, I would think. In 8 months, not a problem, unless some of the tech companies are holding you up, or some of the carriers are holding you up in terms of not voluntarily giving information that they may want. But if the holder of the device gives you the device, you get what's on the device. And then how much further can you take it? What information that isn't on the device but may be on a server somewhere that belongs to a third party, are they going to voluntarily give up? And that's getting into some of the gray areas. So the question is, how far have they gotten in the investigation? They haven't gotten far enough to say that anyone is a suspect, or maybe someone is a suspect and they're not saying it out loud because they need more pieces.
And that's the argument that could be raised here. You know, what is the best way to get somebody to kind of screw up? To say, well, you know what? We don't see any evidence of foul play. We don't see anything here. And then you get very, very comfortable with that fact. And then something happens. And if you're too comfortable, that's when people.
So the other thing that happens, right? And again, we wouldn't know any of this, is you could go, we were talking about getting warrants. If there's something from the device that leads to some reasonable suspicion, you go to a judge, you get a warrant to tap phones, you get a warrant to tap other types of communications, which could then be sealed.
Right.
So there'd be no public record of it. There's no one going to a courthouse saying, oh, wait a minute, the government is doing X, Y, and Z, trying to get certain information. That could potentially remain sealed as part of the investigation. Agree or disagree, Al?
I agree. I mean, that is certainly plausible. And it's been done in the past. I mean, that's certainly something that investigation-wise is one of the tools in the toolbox to use that. But I do like, giving people the thought that the scent is off and that they're not looking at it. That's generally the way things get, discovered in a lot of respects, because then they get a little paranoid as to what didn't work right, or what could they possibly find down the road. And a lot of times that's where the culprit shows themselves without having to have the ha-ha moment with the police department. So
right. And we look at cases like the Adelson case,
Right.
down in Florida. I mean, this thing took 10 years, but things were happening. They had it undercover, and none of the stuff came out until there were charges. But it took years and years in that case. But that case we knew it was a homicide investigation because there was a victim who was found. Here, it's either a missing person. Oh, Al is now a missing person, or it is something much worse. So the question is, at this point, how much information may be gathered right now in an investigation with pieces that are unknown to the public, Jonesy? I mean, that's how they would get the mob. The mob doesn't know they're being investigated. They don't know about wiretaps, but certain things will lead to the government having the ability to do some level of lawful surveillance.
Well, a good member of the mob would always act as though he's under surveillance because they tend to, that tends to happen to them. But you make an excellent point about, you both make an excellent point about people getting into a relaxed state because there's no investigation leading anywhere. And if something like that's going on behind the scenes, I never even thought of the possibility that there could be an ongoing phone tap.
Right, because it would be sealed. And,
Yep.
and this is why Chris is so angry. Do you do any research? Lots of misinformation here. KP and CP got their devices back. Seth hasn't gotten his back yet. Do better, Vinny. I will. Please put an IE after my name, though.
Yes, do better, Chrissy.
Yeah.
Don't yell at Chrissy, but it's an IE. So what does that mean, right? To me, that's the real question, which is, what does that mean? Is there a level of comfort that they're hoping to create?
I think that is. I mean, that is a very valuable tool. It's a very valuable tool. I mean, you take a look at the way law enforcement works. There is a method to the madness, and there is a way that they do things. I mean, you see cases where, they have an individual and they want to try to find the body. And what they end up doing is they drive the guy around, and then they make statements like, it's so sad that young lady is out there in the wilderness and being attacked by animals and don't you think she deserves to have a proper burial? Don't you think the parents and they build up this type of thing, and people fall into it and blurt out information. Yeah. I mean, there's a famous Supreme Court case about that. So, I mean, there is always a method to the madness. Never, ever, ever think that, you sit there and you say, well, this is the way I do it. These guys are professionals and they know what they're doing. And there's a lot of studies that go on.
I hope they know what they're doing.
I
say that because I've seen a couple cases recently where they didn't, including the Delphi case, where they didn't know what they were doing. So I'm just hoping that they know what they're doing. I just want to get to a couple more comments because we're going to run out of time again really quickly. Carolina, Nana, Debbie, have you watched the Lights video? I did see the Lights video and spoke with our local affiliate there. And the bite marks on Chris Prout, the stepfather's arm. I don't know what those marks mean. The Lights video, there are several different interpretations of that. And that's one of the problems with this case is there's a lot of little pieces out there. And I will say this. I will say this. To me, the thing that really strikes me is the way the different parents have reacted to the situation. And I don't know if anyone is responsible, but I'm just saying that it runs counter to every parental nerve in my body, every parental nerve that I've seen from other parents through the decades in cases that I've covered. And that's problematic. I think the world we live in is tough for parents of missing children today because of social media and the spotlight. But I think you have to take that and take the hit, and you take the hit again. and you just keep going, and you just keep going because it's your child. And if there's anything more important than your child, I don't think there is. I don't think there is. And that's just the way I see it. That's my filter, my life. People can see it the way they want. April Diaz, just want to wish you guys a great weekend. There are a lot of sketchy things in this case, in my opinion. I think we can all agree to that. There's things that don't add up and don't make sense, and there should be more.
Well, nothing will make sense until we have this child found.
Yeah. And this might be the key. Kathy Guidry might be onto this, because his gaming device, right? I know I have a child whose games, and I'm like, oh, are you on the phone? No, I'm playing my video game. And there's people that can literally talk to you on your headphones. They can message you, and it's the predator's playfield. These chat rooms in these gaming rooms. It's problematic because they hide who they are, and they can manipulate, and they can groom, Jonesy. It's dangerous. That's why I only play Pong.
I love Pong. When Pong first came out, they would go visit my grandmother in the hospital. They didn't want to bring me up to the room, so they gave me a pocket full of quarters at St. Barnabas, and I played Pong for hours and hours on end.
Mad Mama Bear. They kept a broken tablet that was not used for years. There's a lot of like little things that don't add up. Other cases, there's like the pieces come together very quickly. Idaho students, everything came together quickly with all the surveillance video. Like here, there's no, I'm just shocked that there's not more. I'm just shocked. Anytime someone seemingly disappears because of the world that we live in now. But that's just me. We're almost out of time here, so I don't want to cut you guys off. But thanks so much to our mod squad, obviously, and all the comments. Great comments. And I'm looking at the chat here. Some people believe the stepfather. Some people believe the father. Some people don't believe the stepfather. Some people don't believe the father. Some people believe the mother. Some people don't believe the mother. It's the audience is fractured. Everything is fractured. Should we be half full here and say at least people are still talking about the case and people aren't going to forget Sebastian? Can we do that? Is
Yes,
that the
absolutely.
silver lining today?
That's absolutely right. And I see the green hearts because that was his favorite color. So, people are remembering, and people go forward with that memory. And dear God, I hope we do find him. It's
Absolutely.
just a tragic situation.
I'm not blaming anybody. But let's not forget. Let's keep our eyes open, and let's hope that law enforcement has done everything. And just maybe things are sealed by the court, and there's an ongoing investigation into whoever is on their radar that they do not want to make public. They do not want to make public purposely. They purposely don't want to make that person public. All right. Time to say goodbye. What do you have to say to the folks on the way out here, Al?
Thank a veteran this weekend, okay? And Monday, when you have your day off, understand that that day off is because of the sacrifices that these men and women did and lived through by serving our country. So it's not Memorial Day, so it is a day for the living to thank the living and give them the proper feelings of emotion that one should have, that these guys and women served their country and served them well.
Jonesy.
Well, go to glennjones.net to find out where to hear me on the radio. A lot of Tangamaniacs have been going to a dormant Facebook site. Just simply go to Glenn Jones with the numerals 549, Glenn Jones 549, to join me there.
549er. Gotcha. You can check me out every weeknight, 8 to 10, live on Court TV, 2 hours of live true crime. Only guy on television doing it. Really appreciate everyone in the chat room. Good conversation. And we'll see you next time. Say goodbye, Jonesy.
Goodbye, Jonesy.
Vinny and the Tangents, true crime podcast. Vinny has the blue eyes, Al cracks the jokes. Jonesy stays behind his shades, entertaining all the folks. It's Vinny and the Tangents, true crime podcast. Load up all your comments, hit those super chats. Let's go smash that like button, so we can all have a blast. Vinny, Al, and Jonesy on the job. They're the Sugar Hill gang of true crime. They're telling stories of days gone by. They take crime and turn into a good old time. It's Vinny and the Tangents, true crime podcast.